The taste of defeat was a bitter, metallic tang on Kaelen's tongue. It wasn't the failure that stung the most. He was a professional, and in his line of work, failure was a risk every time he accepted a contract. No, what gnawed at his pride was the sheer, baffling simplicity of his capture. He had been an invisible wraith, a whisper on the wind, until he wasn't. One moment, he was perched on the high stone wall of the royal garden, poised to strike at the oblivious human prince strolling beneath him, and the next, a blinding emerald light erupted, followed by an invisible force that slammed him to the earth as if he were a discarded doll. Now he was in a cage of pure arcane energy, a prisoner within the very palace he had intended to breach. Before him stood his target, Prince Lysander of the Silver Spire Kingdom. The prince was not what Kaelen had expected. He wasn't weak, nor was he the arrogant fop the rumors had painted him to be. He was tall, with broad shoulders and the calloused hands of a man who worked with a sword, not just wore one. His dark hair was tied back, and a weary cynicism was etched around his eyes. "So, the legendary ghost of the Ashwood falls to a simple warding spell," Lysander said, his voice low and devoid of triumph. He gestured to a cloaked figure beside him, the royal archmage. "Not much of a legend, are you?" Kaelen's lips thinned. "You have your victory. Finish it," he would not beg. He would not give them the satisfaction, but a clean end was not in the cards. The archmage, a gaunt woman named Alara, stepped forward. "The contract on your life came from within your own court, elf," she stated, her gaze piercing. "The price of your freedom is not a life, but service. A magical oath of servitude, to be precise. You will guard the prince you sought to kill. Your debt is not to him, but to the magic itself. It will ensure your loyalty better than any chain," Kaelen scoffed. "And what if I refuse?" Alara's smile was thin and humorless. "Then the magic will take its price in full. Your very essence will be consumed until you are nothing but dust." She raised a gnarled hand, and a sigil of swirling silver light appeared in her palm. "You have a choice, ghost. Life or oblivion." He felt the magic reach for him, a hungry, cold tendril seeking purchase in his core. It was not a plea but a command. With a low, frustrated growl, Kaelen acquiesced. The sigil pulsed, and a jolt of searing, agonizing magic coursed through his body, coiling itself around his soul. A gasp escaped his lips, and he fell to his knees as the cage vanished. He was free, yet more bound than he had ever been. He looked up to see Lysander watching him, a flicker of something unreadable. Pity? Concern? In his eyes? The prince held out a hand. "Welcome to my service, Kaelen. We have much to discuss." The debt was paid, but the true price had yet to be counted. Their initial alliance was a tight-strung wire of mistrust. Kaelen shadowed the prince, his presence a constant, silent reminder of his failure and the magical leash that bound him. He moved through the royal halls with the quiet grace of a predator, his elven senses on high alert. He could feel the court stares, the whispers, the fear and suspicion that followed him like a physical cloak. Yet the prince did not treat him as a threat. Instead, Lysander began to use him. "This is a map of the northern territories," Lysander said one evening in his private study, spreading a scroll across a large oak table. "My father believes the border towns are suffering from raids by your people. My spies say otherwise. They claim a third party is involved, sowing discord." Kaelen, who had been studying the intricate carving of a dragon on a bookshelf, turned to the map. "Your spies are right. The elves of the Sunken Peaks do not raid for sport. And they would never venture so far south," Lysander gestured to the map. "There are hidden valleys and old hunting grounds here. Places only an elf would know. I need you to lead me there." Reluctantly, Kaelen agreed. The magical bond that connected them was more than just a punishment. It was a connection that allowed him to sense the prince's moods, his genuine frustration with the rising tensions, and his sincere desire for peace. Their journey north was a silent affair at first, but days on the road broke down the barriers. Lysander, Kaelen discovered, was a keen observer, an intelligent tactician, and a natural leader. He was also fiercely protective of his people, an empathy that Kaelen, an exile, had long forgotten. They found a scorched earth, villages burned not by elven fire, but by something far more sinister. They discovered ancient stone runes, powerful magic that Kaelen recognized as a forbidden art. This was no skirmish. It was a calculated act to incite a war between their kingdoms, to weaken them both for a greater purpose. "Someone is using us," Lysander said. his voice grim as he knelt to examine a charred symbol on a stone. Someone who wants us to destroy each other. Kaelen felt a surge of cold dread. That symbol, it's of the obsidian cult. They were banished centuries ago for practicing blood magic. They believe that by fueling war, they can sacrifice enough lives to summon their ancient dark master. I thought they were just myth. Not anymore, Lysander said, looking at the grim devastation. He met Kaelin's eyes, and for the first time, the elf saw not his captor, but a partner. We have to stop them. Together. The trail of the obsidian cult led them to a hidden crypt, an ancient elven structure that had been erased from all maps. As they navigated the labyrinthine corridors, Kaelen felt the history of his people in the very stones. He had left his heritage behind with his exile, but here he felt a pull, a memory of a time when elves and humans were not just allies, but friends. There's a story, Lysander said, his voice hushed. The Treaty of the Waning Moon. My father told me about it. An alliance between my ancestors and a powerful elven clan. It was said to have been sealed with a magical pact that bound our families together in peace for 1,000 years. But the pact was broken by an act of betrayal. A king of mine killed the clan's leader. That was centuries ago. My father said it was all a lie, a fable. Kaelen stopped, his heart pounding in his chest. My family's clan, the Moonshadows, they were the ones who were betrayed. Our leader was killed by a human king after a fake parley. We believed it was a plot to steal our magic. My people have never forgiven yours. The obsidian cult, Lysander whispered. They could have been the ones who orchestrated that betrayal. They could have used it to sow the seeds of this ancient hatred. To get us to this point. The realization was a heavy weight. Their kingdoms were on the brink of war not because of current tensions, but because of a centuries-old lie. As they delved deeper into the crypt, they found murals depicting the very betrayal Lysander had spoken of. The paintings showed a human king, but in the shadows behind him were figures cloaked in the black robes of the obsidian cult. The murals told the truth. The humans were not the perpetrators. They were co-conspirators, manipulated into an act of violence that had fractured the peace and fueled an ancient hatred that had brought them all to this point. Kaelen felt his resolve shift. The prince was not his enemy. He was the descendant of an equally wronged people. Their hands brushed as they stood over the mural, a brief, electrifying touch that sent a jolt of a different kind of magic between them. It was then, in the heart of their shared past, that Kaelen finally looked at Lysander not as his target or his master, but as a man who understood the weight of history and the injustice of it all. He realized that the feelings growing between them were not just camaraderie, but something far deeper, something forbidden. The crypt's final chamber revealed the obsidian cult's true purpose. A massive, ritualistic stone table was set, etched with sigils of death and destruction, ready to be powered by the bloodshed of a war between elves and humans. And in the center stood their leader, a powerful sorcerer who had been an advisor to both courts. The very man who had hired Kaelen to kill Lysander. A pity you two discovered my little secret, the sorcerer, a man named Valerius, hissed, his eyes glowing with dark power. But it doesn't matter. The gears of war are already in motion. Soon the blood will flow, and my master will be reborn. Lysander drew his sword, and Kaelen drew his two curved daggers, their movements perfectly synchronized. They fought as a single unit, their skills complementing each other in a way that felt as ancient and effortless as the magic that now bound them. Lysander's powerful sword strokes deflected the sorcerer's dark magic, while Kaelen used his silent, shadowy grace to land quick, precise strikes. At one point, a dark spell surged toward Lysander, a projectile of raw shadow energy. Without a thought, Kaelen leaped in front of the prince, using his daggers to slice through the magical projectile. He felt the cold, draining power of the magic bite into his skin, and the world swam for a moment. But he was alive, and Lysander was safe. You took a blow for me, Lysander gasped, his voice filled with a mixture of shock and awe. The vow is to protect you, Kaelen bit out, ignoring the pain. It's the rules, but they both knew it was more than that. It was the moment that their hearts, not their magic, had dictated their actions. The battle raged on, their combined strength ultimately proving too much for the sorcerer. Kaelen landed a final, precise blow to a rune on the sorcerer's chest, causing the dark energy to fizzle out and the man to fall. vanquished. As the magic-fueled haze cleared, they stood breathless, their hands stained with the dust of battle. Their eyes met, and the unspoken words of gratitude and relief passed between them. The vow was fulfilled, the threat eliminated. But a new, more complicated bond had formed. After reporting their findings and exposing the treason, Kaelen was no longer a prisoner. He was a hero. His magical debt had been paid in full the moment he had risked his life to protect the prince. The king, Lysander's father, offered him a place in the court, a life of honor among humans. But the court was a cage of a different sort, filled with politics and suspicions he had no interest in. Lysander came to him in the gardens one evening after the day's celebrations had died down. "You don't have to stay," the prince said, his eyes filled with a sad understanding. "Your debt is paid. Your people will accept you back. You should go home." Kaelin's heart ached with the words. He should go home. His exile was a painful scar, and the chance to return was a gift beyond measure. But his home was no longer the Ashwood. It was here, by the prince's side. "And what about you?" "I have my kingdom to rebuild," Lysander said, his voice quiet. "And a truth to spread to both our peoples. I believe we can heal the rift between us. Our shared past has given us a new future." Kaelen stepped closer, their shadows merging in the moonlight. "And what about our shared future?" Lysander closed the distance between them, and the unspoken words of 100 long, silent nights finally came to the surface. "It's forbidden, a human prince and an elven assassin. It's impossible." "Nothing is impossible," Kaelen said, his voice barely a whisper. "We defeated an ancient cult, defied the very magic that bound us, and unraveled a centuries-old conspiracy. A little more impossibility won't hurt us." Lysander laughed, a low, warm sound. He reached out and gently cupped Kaelin's face. "Perhaps you're right, Ghost of the Ashwood. Perhaps we're simply destined for a different kind of impossible." The debt was paid, but a new, more powerful bond had been forged. One of trust, sacrifice, and a love that was brave enough to stand against the tide of history. The fight for their people's future was only just beginning, and they would face it, together.